The trap springs shut. The distress signal from Outpost K-17 had traveled through the dark void of space, reaching the Terran Defense Fleet within hours. It was a call no human would ever ignore. And SOS meant someone needed help, and humanity always answered. Captain Reynolds, commander of the Vindicator, stood on the bridge, watching the silent, lifeless station float in orbit around a dying red star. The ship's scanners detected no life signs, but something felt wrong. The distress call had come from here. Someone had been alive long enough to send it. Any response from the station? Reynolds asked, his voice calm but firm. Negative, sir, replied Lieutenant Harris, monitoring communications. They're silent. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. Then we go in. A team of 6 elite soldiers boarded a shuttle and descended toward the station. As the docking clamps secured, the metal doors groaned open. A thick silence filled the corridors. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the walls. Lieutenant Carter took point, weapon raised. No bodies, she muttered. No signs of struggle. They moved deeper into the station. The command center was wrecked. Chairs overturned, screens shattered, wires hanging from the ceiling like vines. But still, no bodies. Reynolds activated his comms. What the hell happened here? Then they heard it. A weak, raspy whisper. Trap, it's a trap. The team spun around. A man was slumped against the wall, barely alive. His uniform was soaked in blood, his breathing shallow. Carter rushed to him. Who did this? She asked urgently. The man coughed, eyes wide with fear. They wanted us to call for help. They knew we would. A sudden alarm blared through the station. Red warning lights pulsed like a heartbeat. The team looked at each other, weapons raised. Then, outside the viewing window, dozens of warships emerged from hyperspace. The void of space filled with the Zetheri Empire's fleet, sleek, black vessels shaped like hunting blades, their energy weapons glowing with a sickly green light. Carter's heart pounded. We walked right into their trap. On the Vindicator, alarms screamed as the enemy ships closed in. Harris paled. Sir, we're surrounded. A transmission crackled through the ship's speakers. A deep, guttural voice spoke in a language humanity had only heard in old war records. Then, in perfect English, you are weak. You are prey. This is our proof. The Zetheri had never dared attack humanity before. But today, they had set the perfect bait. Captain Reynolds clenched his fists. Send a message to Earth. His voice was ice. No negotiations. No mercy. Humanity's darkest fury awakens. The message to Earth was sent. Now, all they could do was survive. The Zetheri fleet moved like a pack of predators, encircling the Vindicator. Their lead ship, a massive war cruiser, powered up its weapons. The ship's captain, a monstrous figure with dark chitinous armor, stared at the humans through the holoscreen. You came to save them, the Zetheri leader sneered. Now you will die with them. Before Reynolds could respond, the first blast struck. The Vindicator shook violently as shields absorbed the impact, but warning sirens blared. Shields at 62%. Harris shouted, "We can't take another direct hit like that." Reynolds made a split-second decision. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. Full power. Laser cannons roared to life, sending a volley of energy blasts toward the Zetheri ships. Several enemy fighters exploded instantly, but the war cruiser remained unscathed. More Zetheri ships surrounded them, their weapons locking on. Down in the station, Carter and her team had no time to escape. The docking bay had been destroyed in the attack, cutting off their way out. She turned to Reynolds over comms. "Sir, we're trapped down here." Reynolds' jaw tightened. "Hold your position. Help is coming." But deep down, he knew the truth. They were outnumbered, outgunned. The Zetheri had spent years planning this ambush, and now humanity was on the edge of destruction. Then something changed. A second alert rang through the bridge, one no one expected. "Sir, multiple jump signatures inbound, unknown ships." Harris gasped. Reynolds turned to the screen, expecting more Zetheri reinforcements. Instead, the sky burned with fire. Hundreds of Terran warships erupted from hyperspace, battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers. The full force of the Terran defense fleet had arrived. A single message was broadcast across all frequencies. "This is Admiral Hayes of the Terran Dominion. We received your SOS. Now, we will show them what it means to make humanity bleed." The Zetheri fleet, once so confident, suddenly hesitated. They had set a trap, but now they were the ones caught. Captain Reynolds smirked. Now, the real war begins. The enemy unmasked. The battlefield was chaos. Humanity had arrived in force. Terran warships cut through the Zetheri fleet like a storm of vengeance. Battleships launched missile salvos, carriers unleashed squadrons of fighters, and dreadnoughts fired devastating plasma beams that turned enemy vessels into burning debris. On the bridge of the Vindicator, Captain Reynolds watched as the Zetheri formation crumbled. Their perfect ambush had become a massacre. "They didn't expect this," Lieutenant Harris muttered. "No," Reynolds agreed. "They thought we'd run. They don't understand us." But as the battle raged, something didn't feel right. The Zetheri weren't retreating. They weren't surrendering. They were stalling. Down on the station, Carter and her team secured the dying engineer they had found earlier. He was barely conscious, his breath shallow. "Stay with me," Carter urged. "We're getting you out." The man grabbed her wrist, his bloodied fingers trembling. His voice was weak, but his words sent a chill through her spine. "It's not about the battle. It's about the message." Carter's eyes widened. "What message?" The man gasped for air, struggling to speak. "They wanted to see how we would react." Her mind raced. The SOS, the trap, the way the Zetheri had taunted them before attacking. She turned to her comms. "Captain, I think." Before she could finish, a massive explosion rocked the entire station. The floor shook, metal screamed as bulkheads collapsed. A deep rumble echoed through the halls. Then, silence. Carter coughed, struggling to get back on her feet. "Report." One of her team members pointed toward a nearby window, their face pale. She followed their gaze, and her heart stopped. The Zetheri war cruiser had been sacrificed. Its remains floated in space, its core detonated in a self-destructive explosion. But it wasn't a last act of desperation. It was a beacon. A pulse of strange energy spread outward from the wreckage, traveling faster than light. On the Vindicator, Reynolds saw it too. The Zetheri had sent a transmission, not just to their own kind, but to the entire galaxy. Admiral Hayes' voice came over the fleet-wide comms. What the hell did they just do? A deep sense of unease filled Reynolds. "They wanted to see how far we'd go," he muttered. "And now they're telling everyone." The SOS had never been about luring them into a battle. It was about proving the point. The Zetheri had tested humanity's limits. And now, the rest of the galaxy knew the truth. Humanity did not forgive. Humanity did not show mercy. And most terrifying of all, humanity was willing to burn everything to the ground. The trap springs shut. The battlefield was still, but the damage was done. The Zetheri's final message had been sent across the galaxy. Every species, every empire, every silent observer now knew the truth. Humanity's fury had no limits. On the bridge of the Vindicator, Captain Reynolds stared at the energy pulse fading into the void. His instincts screamed that something far worse was coming. Admiral Hayes' voice crackled through the comms. "We need confirmation." What did they transmit? Lieutenant Harris worked furiously at his console. His face went pale. "Sir, they broadcasted our response," he said. "They recorded everything. Our attack, our fleet's arrival, our message of no mercy, and sent it to every major power in the galaxy." A silence fell over the bridge. The Zetheri had set a trap, But not just for humanity. They had baited the entire universe. Reynolds exhaled sharply. They wanted to prove we're monsters. They wanted fear, Harris added grimly. And we just gave it to them. Meanwhile, on the station, Carter and her team barely survived the explosion. The damaged space station groaned around them, its structure barely holding together. They'd moved through the ruined corridors, heading toward the emergency shuttle bay. The dying engineer was still conscious, though his voice had weakened. "They wanted you to come," he whispered. "They wanted you to show what you are." Carter frowned. "And what are we?" The man gave her a hollow look. "The end of empires." Her blood ran cold. They reached the shuttle bay, but what they saw stole the breath from their lungs. A Theri command ship had landed, and standing before them were three towering figures draped in ceremonial armor. Theri elites. Not warriors, not foot soldiers. Ambassadors. They had never come to fight. They had come to witness. One of the Theri took a step forward, its dark eyes gleaming. "It is done," it said simply. "The galaxy will fear you now." Carter raised her rifle. "You planned this." The alien tilted its head. "We only lit the fire. You provided the flames." A chill settled over the room. The Theri had never wanted a war. They had wanted to prove a point. And now, every empire, every coalition, every silent enemy in the shadows would be watching. Humanity had been tested, and their darkest fury had been unleashed for all to see. Humanity's darkest fury awakens. The weight of this Theri's words hung in the air. The station trembled from the earlier explosions, but Carter and her team remained frozen, weapons trained on the alien ambassadors. "You set us up," Carter growled. "You wanted us to react this way." The lead Theri's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "We did nothing but observe. The galaxy will decide what to do with the truth." Carter's fingers tightened on the trigger. "And what truth is that?" The alien's black eyes gleamed. "That humanity is more dangerous than any of us imagined." Before Carter could respond, the Theri activated their personal teleporters, vanishing in a flicker of blue energy. The only thing left was silence, and the sinking realization that this was never about war. It was about reputation. And humanity had just confirmed every nightmare the galaxy had ever whispered about them. Aboard the Vindicator, back on the bridge, Captain Reynolds stood with Admiral Hayes, watching as the last remnants of the Theri fleet fled into the void. They weren't retreating out of weakness. They had already won. Harris turned from his console, his expression grim. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from multiple factions. Some are demanding explanations. Others are offering alliances." "Alliances?" Reynolds frowned. Hayes sighed. "Some empires are afraid. Others, they want to stand beside the biggest threat in the galaxy." It made sense. The moment the Theri broadcasted humanity's wrath, the balance of power shifted. Some species would fear them. Others would seek to join them. And some would seek to destroy them before they became unstoppable. Hayes turned to Reynolds. "We just walked into a war we didn't start. The question is, how far are we willing to go?" Reynolds' expression hardened. "The galaxy wanted to test us. Now, they'll learn why that was a mistake." The Admiral nodded. "Then let's make this clear. If they fear us, let's give them something to be afraid of." Orders were sent. Humanity's fleets mobilized. This was no longer a battle. This was the beginning of something far greater. A new age was dawning in the galaxy. An age where humanity would never be underestimated again. The true face of humanity. The Terran Defense Fleet moved like a storm across the stars. Warships mobilized. Dreadnoughts deployed. Entire battle groups repositioned themselves along the borders of major alien empires. The message was clear. Humanity was not to be challenged. On the Vindicator, Captain Reynolds studied the latest reports. The Theri were withdrawing from multiple sectors, but their transmission had done its job. The galactic stage was now divided into three camps: those who feared humanity and sought to avoid conflict at all costs; those who wanted to ally with humanity, seeing them as the ultimate power; those who saw humanity as a threat that must be eliminated. Reynolds turned to Admiral Hayes. "We need to act first. The longer we wait, the more time they have to plan against us." Hayes nodded. "Already in motion. The High Council has authorized preemptive strikes against any faction that shows signs of aggression." Reynolds exhaled. "So that's it then. The gloves are off." Hayes gave a grim smile. "They wanted to see our darkest fury. Let's show them what happens when we stop holding back." Meanwhile, in the outer systems, on a distant Zetheri colony world, the night sky burned. Human dropships rained from orbit, landing with seismic force. Armored troops marched through the alien cities, weapons ready, faces emotionless. There were no negotiations, no warnings, no mercy. The Zetheri had wanted to expose humanity's brutality, but they had not expected humanity to embrace it. A terrified Zetheri elder collapsed to his knees as towering human soldiers surrounded him. He looked up at their cold, unflinching visors. This is madness," he whispered. "We surrender." The lead soldier stepped forward. His voice was calm, emotionless. Too late. With a single command, the city was turned to ash. Back on Earth, the Terran High Council watched the galaxy react in real time. Some empires were rallying behind humanity, offering resources and alliances. Others were panicking, sending urgent calls for diplomacy, desperate to avoid becoming the next target. The Zetheri's plan had backfired spectacularly. They had wanted to show the universe that humanity was dangerous. Instead, they had given humanity the perfect excuse to become the very nightmare they feared. One council member turned to the others. "Should we stop this?" The High Chancellor shook his head. "The galaxy has made its choice." He leaned forward, eyes cold. "Now they will live with the consequences." And across the stars, humanity's true face was revealed, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the final judgment. The dawn of a terrifying era. The galaxy was silent, watching, waiting. The Zetheri had gambled everything, believing they could control the narrative, that they could paint humanity as a monster and unite the galaxy against them. But they had made one fatal mistake. They underestimated just how monstrous humanity could be. On the Zetheri homeworld, the High Empress of the Zetheri sat in the war chamber, her claws tapping against the cold stone table. Her advisors argued, their voices shrill with panic. "The humans are striking our colonies one by one. They are moving faster than any species we have ever encountered. We thought exposing them would bring fear, but it has only brought chaos." The Empress closed her eyes, exhaling. "And the other factions?" A trembling advisor answered. "Some have chosen to align with them. Others are staying silent, afraid of being noticed." The Empress slowly opened her glowing violet eyes. "Then our great plan has failed." Silence. One of the warlords leaned forward. "What do we do, Empress?" She stared at the holographic map, where human warships burned a path through Zetheri space. Her mandibles tightened. "We pray that they stop." Meanwhile, in the void, aboard the Vindicator, Captain Reynolds stood at the helm as their fleet approached the final Zetheri stronghold in the sector, the last colony before they reached the homeworld. Lieutenant Harris turned to him. "The Zetheri are offering a full surrender, sir. They're begging us to halt our advance." The bridge crew fell silent, waiting for Reynolds' response. He stared at the transmission, his mind replaying everything. The ambush, the trap, the arrogance of the Zetheri, thinking they could manipulate humanity into self-destruction. They had wanted to turn the galaxy against Earth. Instead, they had forged humanity into something unstoppable. His fingers hovered over the command console. A single word would end it. A single order would decide the future. Admiral Hayes' voice came through the comms. "What's your call, Reynolds?" The captain took a slow breath. Then, in a voice as cold as the void itself, he spoke. No mercy. Across the galaxy, the Zetheri's last colony burned. Their fleets were shattered. Their influence was erased. And the message was clear. Humanity had been tested. Humanity had been challenged. And now, humanity had taken its rightful place as the most feared power in the universe. Epilogue. A warning to the stars. In the dark reaches of space, 1,000 alien civilizations watched the rise of humanity with a mixture of awe and terror. Some would kneel, seeking protection. Some would run, hoping to never draw Earth's gaze. And some would still dream of stopping them. But one truth was now undeniable. When humanity answered an SOS, the galaxy learned to fear their response.